Welcome to 1305 Franklin Street. This building and the one adjacent to it are associated not only with one of Wilmington's most famous residents, but also with an absolute giant in the world of American art. Welcome to the Howard Pyle Studio. Born in 1853 in Wilmington, Howard Pyle is widely regarded as one of America's foremost illustrators. During his lifetime, Pyle would create over 3,000 illustrations for leading periodicals of the day, including Harper's Weekly and Scribner's Monthly. He would also illustrate over 200 texts, including The Adventures of Robin Hood and the story of King Arthur and his knights. Pyle's connection to Wilmington and Delaware was very strong. In fact, his Quaker ancestors first settled in the Brandywine Valley in 1682. His parents were William Pyle, owner of a Wilmington leather business, and Margaret Churchman Pyle, a painter. The Pyle family occupied several homes in Wilmington, including 714 West Street, 207 Washington Street, 1601 Broome Street, and 907 Delaware Avenue. Pyle received his early education at the Old Friends School and married his wife, Anne Poole, at Quaker Meeting. As an adult, Pyle would become an active member of the Swedenborgian Church of the Holy City. Pyle would often summer with his wife and children in Rehoboth Beach, trips that no doubt would partially inspire the landscapes depicted in Howard Pyle's Book of Pirates. Pyle's happy memories from his life in Wilmington and other parts of Delaware would long serve as inspiration during his prolific career as an illustrator. Howard Pyle opened this studio in 1883, and it was here that the great illustrator would create the masterpieces that would be admired around the world. While Howard Pyle was celebrated for his illustrations, he was also renowned as a teacher. Between 1894 and 1900, he would teach at Philadelphia's Drexel Institute. But in time, Howard grew frustrated with teaching students that weren't of his own choosing. He didn't feel that he had enough time to spend with the students that showed the most promise. Some would say he felt stifled by mediocrity. His solution? To build his own school where he could choose his own students. But the question was where to build the school. The answer was obvious. Right here in his beloved Wilmington, right next to his own studio. Pyle built a pair of studios directly next to his own, and between 1900 and 1910 operated the Howard Pyle School of Art. During this time, 75 of the country's greatest young illustrators, all hand-chosen by Pyle, would study under the master's tutelage, including such legendary artists as Stanley M. Arthurs, Frank E. Schoonover, N.C. Wyeth, Harvey Dunn, as well as dozens of other talented men and women. In the studios, Pyle mixed a weekly critique and instruction with studio time for each student. Astonishingly, Pyle did not charge tuition at the school. Instead, students paid a very modest rent for studio space and bought art supplies from Pyle at cost. In 1910, Pyle left Wilmington for Italy to pursue his new interest in mural painting. Tragically, Pyle died in Florence, Italy of Bright's disease, a serious kidney infection, in 1911. Following Pyle's untimely death, a group of his former students formed the Wilmington Society of the Fine Arts in 1912 for the purpose of purchasing a collection of Pyle's work so that it would remain in the city he loved. The society would eventually become known by a different name, the Delaware Art Museum, where you can see the work of the great illustrator to this day. Today, Pyle Studio is owned and lovingly cared for by the Studio Group, a private organization of women that began in 1935 as a small group of friends who enjoyed painting together. In 1938, the group rented one of the studios at 1305 Franklin Street from Stanley Arthurs, one of Howard Pyle's star pupils who purchased the property from Pyle's estate after his death. When Stanley Arthurs died in 1950, Studio Group member Ellen DuPont Wheelwright purchased the property in order to preserve it for its original purpose. In 1964, the Studio Group, Inc. bought the properties from Ellen Wheelwright's estate. The group maintains the historic studios to this day. We're about to take a quick tour of Howard Pyle's private studio, as well as the adjacent studios which once comprised his art school. Even the walk to the original building is historic. Just take a look at these millstones. These were once in use in one of the 19th century mills along the Brandywine River. If you think that's impressive, just wait until you see inside. The main studio today is strikingly different in appearance from when Pyle occupied the space. Most noticeably, the interior has been painted white. Pyle originally insisted the interior be the color of telegraph poles, in keeping with the dark interiors typical of the Victorian era. The dramatic arches are original and resemble the interior of a ship, a pirate ship if you will, one of Pyle's favorite subjects. The Moroccan chests at the ceiling level were added by Arthurs after Pyle's death. Fireplaces throughout the building provided the only heat. Initially, there was no electricity. The space originally had 2 skylights, one with northern exposure and one to catch southern light. Only the northern one remains, which supplies plenty of the constant light desired by the artists who paint in the space today. This is the space where Pyle held his demonstrations and led critiques. When the original floor was replaced sometime after Pyle's death, a cross-section of a buttonwood tree was placed in the new floor to mark the exact spot from which Pyle addressed his students. Of course, this is also where Pyle himself painted, and nearby is one of the master's original easels. Just off the main studio is a small side room, which Pyle built as a studio for his sister Catherine, also an accomplished artist. Pyle's original office has since been converted into a small kitchen. Many other details of late 19th century architecture remain around the studio, including wrought iron hinges, bullseye windows, and Dutch doors. Back outside, a few steps across the courtyard take you to the studios that Pyle originally built for his private art school. While all of the students at the school were immensely talented, after all, this was in essence a graduate school for gifted artists, there was nonetheless a definite hierarchy to the way students were assigned to the studios. Studio 1, located closest to Franklin Street, was reserved for less experienced students who were still shaping their talent. Today the studio is named for Eugenia Rhodes, a founding member of the studio group. Studio 2, located closer to the master's studio, was for Pyle's very best students. This is the space Frank Schoonover and N.C. Wyeth shared, 2 outstanding artists who, along with Pyle and the other pupils, would help define the style of painting known as the Brandywine School. Today the studio is named after benefactor and former studio group member Helen Farr Sloan, widow of internationally acclaimed artist John Sloan. Helen Sloan lived and worked in this space for many years. Today the studios are still in use by the 36 active members of the studio group, accomplished artists in their own right. The group still holds demonstrations once a week most of the year for their members, and sponsor workshops by nationally acclaimed artists. The studio group is now one of the oldest continuous painting groups in the United States. While open by invitation only, the group continues Howard Pyle's legacy of meeting the special art needs of the community. The group contributes to the Delaware Art Museum and the University of Delaware and awards scholarships to young students. The Howard Pyle Studio is also a frequent stop on Wilmington's monthly art loop. This concludes our visit to the Howard Pyle Studio. But before we go, I wanted to share with you 2 pieces of correspondence. One is from Howard Pyle to the president of Drexel Institute, written during his tenure there, and it reads, "I know of no better legacy a man can leave to the world than that he has aided others to labor at an art so beautiful as that to which I have devoted my life." And in another piece of correspondence written in 1906, the great illustrator said, "My life here in Wilmington is one of great happiness." Well, I hope you are happy now that you've had a chance to learn more about one of Wilmington's most famous residents. Join us next time on Where in Wilmington as we explore other great cultural resources and find new ways to share our common love of Wilmington. For Wilmington in the middle of it all, for Where in Wilmington, I'm Rich Neumann.